Purpose of learning and practicing the Vedas. In this part 2 video, we will examine the larger purpose of chanting selected portions of the Vedas to refine the mind, weaken the dominance of I and mine, align our lives with Dharma, and gradually move from inner disturbance towards clarity, responsibility, and self knowledge. Every day, the human mind is exposed to countless illful influences. If left unchecked, they can lead to dissatisfaction, poor judgment, and unnecessary suffering. Repeated Vedic chanting works in the opposite direction. Every repetition reminds us of Dharma, humility, gratitude, self control, and the divine presence. Just as repeated exposure to worldly influences changes our thinking, repeated exposure to sacred teachings gradually transforms it for the better. Traditionally, complete Vedic education requires many years of full time study under a guru. However, many people belonging to the Vedic tradition later entered secular professions and could not continue such extensive learning while fulfilling family and social responsibilities. To help such householders remain connected with Vedic wisdom, learned teachers recommended a carefully selected corpus of Vedic recitations. A person engaged in a modern, non Vedic profession can remain meaningfully connected with the Vedic tradition and allow its teachings to gradually shape the mind, character, and way of life. For example, the three-part compact Vedic corpus, Sri Rudram and Chamakam, selected suktas, and Siva Upasana with Shanti Panchakam and Mantra Pushpam, is regularly chanted in many Smartha traditions, particularly in South India. Again, this is presented only as an example. Viewers belonging to other sampradayas may relate it to the teachings and practices of their own Guru Parampara. Together, these recitations may be understood as a practical spiritual discipline for gradually reducing the dominance of I and mine. Sri Rudram. Sri Rudram teaches surrender, reverence, and the recognition of Rudra throughout existence. Sri Rudram is chanted seeking Rudra's grace, protection, and inner purification. But its deeper significance is that it repeatedly expands our vision beyond the idea that the divine is confined to a temple, an image, or one particular form. Sri Rudram salutes Rudra in nature, living beings, human occupations, prosperity, hardship, beauty and severity, creation, and dissolution. It gradually teaches the worshipper to recognize that no part of existence stands outside the divine presence. When this vision is internalized, our outlook slowly begins to change. We move away from the assumption that only we are important or that everything else exists merely for our convenience. We begin to understand that all beings, all forces of nature, and all stages of life are pervaded, governed, or manifested by the same divine reality. The result is, therefore, not self glorification, but humility. The separate I becomes less dominant. Respect for others increases. We begin to understand the vastness of existence and our dependence upon the larger cosmic order. Therefore, Sri Rudam is not merely a prayer for grace and protection alone. It is also a discipline of perception, a repeated training to recognize Rudra in every aspect of life, cultivate humility, purify the mind, and prepare the seeker for deeper spiritual realization and liberation. Chamakam. Chamakam follows Sri Rudram and is traditionally chanted after it. Chamakam begins by asking for the essentials of life: food, health, strength, vitality, longevity, knowledge, speech, self control, courage, and prosperity. It then expands progressively to include family, social harmony, agriculture, animals, natural resources, ritual materials, Vedic knowledge, and finally spiritual fulfillment. At first glance, it appears to be a longer prayer asking for numerous blessings. However, its deeper significance extends far beyond merely seeking material prosperity. This repeated expression, cha may, literally meaning, and may this be granted to me, does not encourage endless desire or greed. Rather, it acknowledges that every aspect of life ultimately depends upon divine grace. One should notice what the seeker asked during the Sankalpam when he started reciting Rudram and Chamakam. The true prayer should always be completed only if the seeker aims for universal welfare and not him alone. When the Sankalpam is for the universe, then the seeker prays saying Chame, Chame at the end of every request to receive these blessings, not merely for personal enjoyment, but to fulfill dharma, discharge responsibilities, contribute to the welfare of society, and progress towards spiritual realization as per his Sankalpa mantra at the beginning. Thus, Chame, that is for me, should not be seen in isolation as it represents the sincere seeker living in harmony with the larger cosmic order, not an isolated individual seeking selfish gain. Chanting of Suktams. A Suktam is a Vedic hymn addressed to a Devata or natural force or spiritual principle. We chant Suktas to invoke grace, cultivate gratitude, refine the mind, and align ourselves with the larger cosmic order. This illustration presents a philosophical movement from the unmanifest to the manifest universe. The Nasadiya Suktam is associated with the mystery of the formless origin, the Hiranyagarbha Suktam with cosmic emergence, and the Purusha Suktam with ordered manifestation. The later layers contemplate natural forces, celestial bodies, and the structured cosmos. This sequence bears a broad metaphorical resemblance to modern descriptions of cosmic expansion and structure formation. By repeatedly contemplating such vastness, the chanter begins to realize that human life is only a small part of an immense interconnected order. This does not make us worthless, it reduces pride and possessiveness while cultivating humility, reverence, and responsibility. We chant suktas addressed to Purusha, Narayana, Shri, Saraswati, Durga, and Bu, etc., because each hymn reveals a distinct contemplative dimension of the one supreme reality. Purusha symbolically represents the cosmic totality and ordered structure of existence. Narayana is contemplated as the all pervading and indwelling supreme reality. Shri signifies nourishment, auspiciousness, and responsible prosperity. Saraswati signifies knowledge and inspired speech. Durga signifies courage, protection, and the power to cross adversity. And Bu signifies stability, support, and our dependence upon the earth. In the same way, many other suktas contemplate different manifestations, powers, and functions of the same supreme reality. Through such worship, the seeker does not merely praise different deities, he learns to align knowledge, intention, effort, and resources with dharma. Here, dharma means the sustaining order expressed through right conduct, responsibility, and compassion. This wider vision gradually weakens ahankara and mamakara, the limited notions of I and mine, because the seeker recognizes that knowledge, strength, wealth, and opportunity do not arise independently from the individual but depend upon nature, society, countless living beings, and the larger cosmic order. Siva Upasana mantras, Shanti Panchakam, and Mantra Pushpam approach the reduction of I and mine from three complementary directions. Siva Upasana expresses salutation, refuge, and contemplation of Shiva as the reality present within and throughout existence. This weakens the assumption that the individual alone is independent or central. Shanti Panchakam broadens prayer beyond personal peace by seeking harmony in learning, relationships, natural conditions, and the surrounding order. It reminds us that our well being cannot be separated from the well being of others. Mantra Pushpam contemplates the mutual dependence of water, fire, air, the sun, the moon, rain, stars, and time. It shows that life and prosperity arise through innumerable supports and are not produced by us alone. Thus, at a contemplative level, these mantras transform self importance into surrender, private welfare into shared harmony, and possessiveness into gratitude and responsible stewardship. A mantra becomes transformative through a gradual process. First, it is chanted correctly as sacred sound. Next, its meaning is learned through the explanations of a competent guru. That meaning must then be reflected upon repeatedly until it becomes personal understanding. Through meditation, this understanding deepens into feeling and devotion, bhakti arising from matured jnana. Finally, the values of the mantra must appear in conduct through reverence for nature, compassion, gratitude, self restraint, and responsible living. Mere repetition may preserve the sound tradition, but genuine transformation occurs only when sound, meaning, reflection, devotion, and right living become one integrated discipline.